wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
What I wanted to cover was a little bit about Seth Rich and that case revolving around his death. Seth Rich was a DNC staffer. By all accounts, he was upset by Bernie Sanders and his murder, which was over 10 months ago. And was murdered over 10 months ago. The police said that it was a robbery. Only problem with that is nothing was stolen. He was also talked about by Julian Assange, the head of WikiLeaks, in a Dutch interview. Julian talked about him as if they had dealings in the past, so that kind of links them automatically. A former UN ambassador and friend of Assange had also admitted to having a meeting with somebody at a DC college campus to get the information, which later turned into the Bethesda email, or I should say the Clinton emails. Now, is this exact evidence? No, but it's more credible than a Russian conspiracy, especially since that conspiracy was started by a private company which was hired by the DNC and also had anti-Russian ties. And then they partly retracted that statement, which we still are going by to this day.
Let's look at what the New York Times reported. They based that conclusion, meaning the intelligence agency, on another finding, that the Republicans hacked the Republican National Committee's computer system in addition to their attacks. That's false. So the intelligence is wrong. It didn't happen. We offered the New York Times conclusive proof that it didn't happen. They refused to look at that. They ignored it because it didn't fit the narrative. The bottom line, Michael, is the intelligence is wrong because they're writing that the conclusion that they came to was based in part on the RNC was hacked. It wasn't hacked. We have intelligence agencies that we work with that were willing to help sort this out. They refused to look at that because it didn't fit the narrative that the New York Times wanted to write. It is reprehensible what they have done. And so I do question so many of these things. One, if that's how the intelligence was based, then it clearly is wrong, and we were willing to offer proof to that point. Second, the report was not conclusive among the 17 intelligence agencies. They admit that. Three, if the CIA is so convinced of this, why won't they go on the record and say that it was, as they did with the DNC? This is, I believe that there are people within these agencies that are upset with the outcome of the election and are pushing a personal agenda. But the facts don't add up. And I think that the idea that the media immediately sides with these unnamed sources is a problem. You guys are willing to run with whatever comes out as unnamed sources from unnamed agencies. And yet the CIA...
Wow! The land of make-believe!
People immediately began circulating the story to validate the thesis that they had been advancing for many months now. And if you took the story at face value, yeah, you might believe that your pre-existing beliefs regarding Rich had been validated, but normally what is helpful in these circumstances is to take some time to process the new information, to vet it, to check it against additional sources, and not to jump to rash conclusions about its veracity. But that didn't stop conservative media like Breitbart and the Drudge Report and Fox News from going wild with the story. Sean Hannity has led with it this evening on his TV show. And what you would have found if you took a moment to pause and reflect before peddling this story is that the story has fallen apart upon the most minimal scrutiny.
Oh my God, stop fucking lying, always lying to me.
To significant efforts to get us material and often very significant risks. As a 27-year-old works for the DNC who was shot in the back, murdered just 2 weeks ago for unknown reasons as he was walking down the street in Washington. So
that was just a robbery, I believe, wasn't it?
No, there's no finding. So
what are you suggesting? What are you suggesting?
Suggest there is tangible evidence on Seth Rich's laptop that confirms he was communicating with WikiLeaks prior to his death. Now, the question is, why has D.C. police, as the lead agency on the investigation for the past 10 months, insisted this was a botched robbery when till this day there is no evidence to suggest that? The Rich family hired Rod Wheeler, a former MPD homicide detective, to run a parallel investigation into their son's death. Wheeler says he believes there's a...
Our source is not the Russian government, and it is not a state party.
It's either this. It's propaganda intended to incite the American people to anger toward Russia for some reason, or our intelligence community is so ignorant and naive that they should all be replaced. And here's the kicker. Here is why it cannot possibly be an organized nation state. Because the hack on the DNC used a piece of malware a year and a half old, and there have been many updates since then. Do you actually believe the Russian intelligence services spend all their time improving their malware, and then when you do an important attack, go, well, I used that thing from a year ago, it only had a few bugs? No.
Understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it.